Hi everyone, this is the first episode of Cathode Bias, and my name is Chris. Yeah, I just started this YouTube channel primarily to cover my interests in vintage hi-fi, specifically tube amplifiers from the 60s. I'm a collector and now restorer of vintage tube amplifiers. Also have just a lot of vintage hi-fi equipment in general, and in the last couple of years I've really kind of gone down the vinyl collecting rabbit hole, so I want to kind of discuss a little bit about just vintage hi-fi collection, and also some of the culture and music that's involved and that I listen to and just been digging most recently. So I'm hoping to have some guests come on here. I'll see how it goes. It's a brand new experiment, and just want to try it out. So so a couple of things about me. I've been into vintage hi-fi for about 20 years, going back to around the 2000 time frame. And into hi-fi in general, going back to the 90s when I was in high school. My first system, and I'd say my first real pair of speakers, was a Klipsch KG1, which had a small horn tweeter in it, made in the US. I got them brand new in high school. And also had kind of what's rare nowadays, a Klipsch KG SW, which was a two 8-inch woofers and a bandpass subwoofer. So that's kind of how I got started. Didn't have any too excited of hardware back then, but did start off with one of those Klipsch speakers, and I think that was kind of my gateway into hi-fi. And I had them for a long time, and I actually know where they are today. But in about the 2000 time frame, I bought my first house in Lake Tahoe, and a friend of mine who was big into collecting in the 90s and went to a lot of in the 2000 time frame, went to a lot of shows, and basically started buying and selling on the internet early on. Had just to this day has a massive hi-fi collection. A lot of everything from the 30s to the 60s. A lot of gear from theater gear, just RCA, Western Electric stuff. A lot of the Western Electric stuff is gone, but it was there previously. And hi-fi stuff like Marantz, Macintosh, Fisher, Scott, etc., etc. So he kind of was my gateway into sort of the vintage world, and he was collecting with another friend of his as well. That was kind of his gateway into the vintage world, and between the two of them, bought and sold a lot of sort of vintage gear in the early 2000 time frame. So he came out to visit, and he brought out a Leek Stereo 20, which was a British-made tube amplifier. I think it was EL 84 based, really beautiful design, point-to-point wiring. If you're not familiar with Leek, it's kind of like the Marantz of England, really. It's like really beautiful designed British amplifiers. Pretty rare in the US, it's hard to come by. I see them come up on the market once in a while. And I used that amplifier for about a year before I returned to my friend, and then went on to purchase a Fisher 400 for him, which is really the first tube amplifier I bought and used for a long time. It's a great entry tube amp for right now, as I would say. And then also, eventually around the 2007, 2006 time frame, I made my first really significant vintage hi-fi purchase. I bought a big chunk of a collection, probably about 15 to 20 pieces. A collector was looking to basically part with his collection, and I bought, I'd say, a lot of the vintage tube amp that came out of it. Marantz, Fishers, Scotts, Dynacos, you name it, came out of that collection. Some of it I still have to this day, Macintoshes. So that was really my first big purchase. That was about 15 years ago now. On and off since then, I've basically gone in and out of the hobby, and to this day I have about say around 20 tube amplifiers and about half dozen or more speakers, etc., etc. So that's just a little bit about myself. During COVID, previous to COVID, I didn't do a lot of, honestly, a lot of physical record collecting. Just knew it was a rabbit hole and wanted to avoid it, quite frankly. But I got kind of bored during COVID and bought a turntable, and in the last 2 years kind of gone really kind of down the vinyl rabbit hole, and I'll be talking a little bit about that as well, and some of the records I'm listening to, and maybe some records I found recently that have interested me. and just what's going on in the vinyl market in general. I know I'm one of the newcomers and one of the people responsible for kind of the what's happening in the vinyl market right now, but it seems to be exploding, and prices are going up across the board. But not just vinyl. I also hope to. I've been doing some restoration work. Early on, I set my pieces out to have to be restored, but found it was getting really hard to find good restorers that could turn stuff around in a reasonable amount of time, and decided that it was time for me to learn how to do it myself. With help for some people on Instagram, which I really appreciate, and my father-in-law, who's an electrical engineer, and my brother, who's an electrical engineer. I completely restored my first piece early this year, which was a Fisher KX100 integrated tube amplifier. And since then, I've just been on a roll, and I think I've done about 5 or 6 amplifiers, Dynacos. I'm working on a Macintosh right now, 240, MC240. I've got Matt Morant's 8 that I'm working on, so a lot of different pieces that I've been working on, and KX200 Fisher that I finished came out really well. I'm really proud of that piece in particular. But yeah, so I'll be talking a little bit about some of the projects I'm working on, and hopefully, like I said, bringing some other people on to discuss their projects as well. Yeah, that's about it. I just hopefully we'll get to know everybody, and jump into the HiFi soon, and talking about my current system. Thanks a lot, and thanks for joining along.